Hi, you're listening to Childless and Moving Onward. This is the place where we talk about thriving in life when you're a woman who is childless, not by choice, regardless of the road that brought you to childlessness. Hi, this is episode 43 of Childless and Moving Onward. Welcome if this is your first time listening. Welcome back if you've listened before. And thank you to all of you. This podcast is where I explore the intricate challenges, unexpected moments, emotional landscapes, and sometimes landmines of being childless not by choice. Today, I'm diving into our stories, or more specifically, the power telling your story can bring to you. I'm your host, Gail Miller, a physician, life coach, and a speaker. Join me as I guide you through this important conversation. Hopefully, I will be infusing it with a little bit of humor, because I think having some humor is important when it's fitting, and also some heartfelt insights. Now, when you share your story about being childless, not by choice, it truly can be a powerful and transformative experience. And let's be honest, sometimes we need to add some humor in because it's the only thing keeping us from turning into a human puddle of difficult emotions. Opening up about your journey can give you a measure of healing, some connection, and can give you support when you are involuntarily childless. Let's explore why sharing this. It's not something that comes naturally or easily for most. I get that. Instead, it can be really challenging, and for a few reasons. So let's look at that. And first is the emotional vulnerability of all of it. With unwanted childlessness often comes deep emotional wounds. There's grief, there's loss, there's shame, even though it is not shameful, but we feel it. We've been programmed through society's messages to feel a sense of shame and the accompanying stigma of childlessness. But here's a tip. Develop a world-class eye roll, and that can be surprisingly therapeutic. That eye roll when anybody gives the hint, sometimes it's a hint and sometimes a direct message, that it's shameful to be childless. Talking about the raw emotions, revealing them to the world, it really can be daunting and leave you feeling exposed and vulnerable. And I get it. I've been there. The second reason why it's challenging to tell your story is misunderstanding. The misunderstanding by society. Many people believe that childlessness is always a choice, that there is always a way to have a child if you want one, and that it's easy. People can and often do make insensitive comments, make judgments because of this lack of understanding. People without children, we often worry about being perceived negatively, when in reality, you're dealing with complicated and painful circumstances. The third reason it can be challenging to tell your story is the invisible grief. Unlike other forms of loss, the grief of childlessness really goes unrecognized or not believed by society, by far too many people. There is this common misconception that, quote, you can't miss what you never had, end quote. The hidden grief can feel so isolating, and you end up sometimes believing that you're wrong for grieving. it's something that's really difficult to articulate. The lack of recognition for this type of loss makes it harder for those of us to find validation and support, because people out there are thinking this isn't something you should or can or feel grief over. The fourth reason for that feeling of being challenging to tell your story is the fear of judgment. People without children are judged and judged harshly. And then also comes the advice. The have you tried? And then fill in the blank with whatever someone is convinced they know will get you pregnant. Or have you looked at adoption? Have you considered surrogacy? Advice given that people think we haven't ever considered, and that they have no idea what it entails. They don't understand our circumstances. Some people are childless not because of fertility challenges, but for other reasons. And then comes judgment over, well, you should have tried. See, you've made a choice. No, you made a decision based on your situation and what you know is best. And best doesn't mean it's good. It's just the better of evil options most of the time. The fifth reason why it can feel so challenging to tell your story is relive the pain. It's that recurring pain. Telling your story about your journey of involuntary childlessness can reopen emotional wounds. Sometimes telling your story can sort of feel like you're on automatic pilot, and it does. And you can tell it without emotion, or you can keep the emotions in check and not let them come up while you're on basically automatic pilot. And then other times it can feel like that wound has been reopened again. And sometimes it feels not just reopened, it feels like it's been ripped more. But when you have a clear understanding of what the challenges are, that can prepare you for telling your story. By doing that, by telling your story, you're making a more supportive environment for others who are childless, not by choice. They can hear your story. They can see you taking that power back. And it can ease their sense of isolation because they see there's other people who are childless, not by choice out there. When you hear someone else talking about it, you see them, you realize you're not alone. Sometimes you feel heard and seen for the first time. And then you realize there are people out there with the understanding and the empathy you need. So that brings me to, why would anybody even want to tell their story when there are all these reasons why it's so challenging? With all these reasons why it's challenging to tell your story, it can seem daunting. But you can get back so much in return. There's so much power in telling your story. Now, I struggled, admittedly, for a long time about sharing my story, any details, or to even let anyone know that I'm childless, not because I wanted to be, but because of my circumstances. I wanted to be a mom, and it didn't happen. And my nature is to be very private in general about everything. So the idea of speaking about something so personal and raw was, to say the least, unsettling. Add to that the reality of having two women in my life who are unfortunately the type of people to take somebody else's pain point and exploit it, use it to deliberately cause hurt. And they would readily do it, and with relish. With glee, they would do that to me. But I started to look at at how telling my story would be of benefit. I also was very fortunate because after a lifetime of because of my personal social circumstances and because of my professional work, I was often surrounded by people who were not supportive, who, because of competitiveness, would claw at each other, like couldn't be happy for others if they were getting ahead or accomplishing anything. But after a very long part of my life of experiencing that, I was fortunate to find a couple of the right groups of women who showed me that, yeah, there are women out there who lift other women up instead of tearing them down to feel good about themselves. I mean, don't ask me how somebody feels good about themselves by taking somebody else down. It's a topic for a different discussion. But there are women who do that. And I was fortunate to finally find women who did not behave like that. And so I realized the power there is in using my voice, both to help others and to help myself. I realized that by showing that I don't see shame in my childlessness, no one else could use that to shame me. The importance of speaking out was highlighted for me when that realization finally hit home. When I realized my story could help others, could help myself, that the shame I was afraid of started with me recognizing there was no shame in it. And recognizing, like, if somebody else needs to try to hurt me to feel good about themselves, that speaks about them and not me. And that's when I finally accepted, recognized, acknowledged my story matters. I need to tell it. Now, that was about me and why I did that, why it was difficult for me and what happened to overcome that. But now let's talk about why you should consider telling your story. It can be therapeutic, and it's a freeing experience to tell your story about childlessness. It's freeing to recognize I'm telling this without shame, because there is no shame in being childless. When you speak about it, when you give your path a voice, it gives you the space to process your emotions, to reflect on your experiences in a different way, and that can help you find clarity. Many people who share their stories of childlessness find it to be really helpful in their healing journey, helping them come to terms with their grief and rebuild the sense of self-worth. When you put your story into words to speak out loud, you realize there's no shame in it. By sharing your stories, others who are also childless and silent will reach out. And then you discover others with shared experiences. And from that, you're each getting validation and support. Another benefit of sharing your story is the power to educate others about the realities of involuntary childlessness. When you talk about it, you're helping to break down the stigmas and the misconceptions about childlessness. What a profound effect you can have through your story when you're speaking up. When you're speaking up, it can lead to a better understanding and empathy from society as a whole. Another reason, benefit to telling your story is when you're sharing that story, others can feel not just validation, but they're inspired to realize they can face their similar challenges. They can see hope through your voice. By sharing your journey, by being authentic and opening up about the setbacks and the pain others see that you feel, they also realize they're not alone in their struggles. Think about the impact it's had on you when others speak honestly about their childless journey. How you feel when you realize, wow, I'm not alone. You can have that same positive influence on someone else. That is purpose. That is powerfully supportive. And a final reason why it's beneficial to tell your story, the act of sharing your story can be indescribably empowering. It lets you take control of your narrative instead of society determining your narrative, usually through incorrect and harmful stereotypes and misconceptions. Speaking about your story can help you see your strengths and find purpose. Remember, there isn't a one-size-fits-all to either your path to childlessness. Everyone's circumstances are different. Even when you share some common things, everybody's story is different. And so there's no one-size-fits-all approach to sharing your story. And everybody has a different personality and a different way of coming across. But it's something you can do through online groups and support groups, whether they're online or in person, through creative expression, personal conversations, and even public speaking. You get to choose how and when. You get to choose how much of your story you tell, and tell it in a way that feels authentic and right to you. Besides healing yourself, sharing your experiences really can create ripples of understanding and support in the community. It really is empowering. But saying that doesn't really do it justice. Now, you may be wondering, okay, well, how do I do this? So let's talk about the steps to overcome the obstacles that are getting in the way of you sharing your story. First, take small, safe steps. Start by sharing your story with someone you trust. Use calming techniques like breath work and open up gradually to a close, trusted, either friend or supportive family member. And share the experience in a way that builds confidence within yourself. Don't judge or edit yourself as you speak. It doesn't need to be organized, especially at first. You just need to start the process of using your voice. Don't be afraid to show emotions, to cry, to get angry, whatever you're feeling. Be authentic. Be you. Second, take time to understand your emotions without judgment. Process your feelings and gain clarity about your experiences by journaling or creative activities. What it does is it helps you to organize your thoughts and prepare for sharing. Write to work through the pain. Even for those of you who don't like to journal, who don't like to write, this is beneficial. So there's different parts to this that you want to write, different versions. You write what I would call a hurting version, one that's raw, that's not filtered. You're just getting the words and the emotions out. And then there's the second version where you examine what you've been through and recognize and acknowledge your growth where you started, where you've come to. And then the third part of this is to write something in a way that's helpful to others, to inspire others in some way, whether it's to inspire them to do the work to heal, whether it's to inspire them to see they're not alone. Write something that's helpful to others. Whether you're doing it to inspire them, to share, or to have them feel seen and heard and validated. Acknowledge that it feels vulnerable. As Brené Brown says, owning our story and loving ourselves through that process is the bravest thing we'll ever do. Recognize that vulnerability is a strength, not weakness. Make healing your goal, not reopening your wounds. Process your experience. It's not about reliving the pain, but about finding meaning and purpose. And then share your story in community, in the Childless Not by Choice community. When you do this, you realize you're not alone, and others realize that for themselves as well. And then you get this connection that gives understanding and support. Remember, sharing your story is a personal journey. There's no right or wrong way to do it. There's no right or wrong process. Be patient and be kind to yourself through the process. By sharing your experiences, you're not just working on healing yourself, you're giving others validation, and you are providing help for others as well. All right, that's all for today. Thanks for joining me, and I'll be back with you next week. Thanks for tuning in to Childless and Moving Onward. I hope you enjoyed today's episode as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. You can stay up to date on everything I do by following me on Instagram at Childless Path Onward or on Facebook and YouTube at Path Onward. Until next time, thanks again.